Learn more by observing people, places, and events around them. Ravi, a student of class 6, returned home recently from a long vacation and told his friends all about the historical buildings and monuments he saw at Delhi. The discussion on historical events, monuments, among Ravi and his friends got very lively. They came to the conclusion that, by studying history, one can learn about things that happened in the past, why they happened, and something about the people involved. Manuscript of an early Liraranan. What is history? History traces all aspects of the course of human civilization since the earliest times. Over the years, the world has been divided into many. The father of history, Herodotus, is regarded as history is a Greek word. It means to know about the past. Countries which differ from each other in the ways in which they live. Studying past events tells us a lot about our ancestors, that how they lived, what they ate, what kind of clothes they wore, the kinds of shelters or houses they lived in, their beliefs, their leisure activities, their festivals, the sort of difficulties they faced, how they overcame them, etc. We also learn about various aspects of the lives of kings, priests, merchants, hunters, gatherers, scientists, art and artisans, musicians, and importance of studying history. The past leads to the present. In other words, present situations have evolved out of past actions and events. This is why studying the past helps us to better understand present problems and situations. It also makes it easier for us to shape a better future for ourselves. Human beings are called Homo sapiens by scientists. The earliest fossil remains, found in Africa, are almost 5 million years old. Methods of studying the past. There are two ways in which we can understand the history of any country. Careful observation of reliable source material, rational approach to accepting or rejecting historical interpretations. Let's discuss. What do we study in history T? How does one get hold of reliable source material? This is done by excavating, digging up old historical sites. We unearth, dig up various objects such as pieces of crockery, ornamented brick, jewelry, etc. Realm, old remains, like these give us valuable information about the people who used these products, how these objects were made, the circumstance people lived in, what the various sections of society did for a living, the outlook on life, their type of government, etc. History is not simply record of kings and queens, but it also comprises the lives of different groups of people. For example, the lives of kings and queens were different from the lives of merchants, farmers and herders in the past. It's true even today that people of different groups and communities folly. Word box. Manuscripts, handwrite 10 materials. Archaeology, the science of digging up and marking relics of the Popeye monuments, ruins of old forts, buildings, etc. surviving from a past age. Script, the style or form in which fetters or symbols are written. Secular literature, literature that does not have anything to do with religion. Different practices and customs in different parts of the country. Prehistory, Purv ka Itihas. Historians have divided history into two sections. Prehistory, there are no written records of this period. Men lived on earth for thousands of years before they learned the art of writing, as there are no written records to rely on. Thus, the study of the early stages human history is entirely based on the material remains left by early man. Proto-historic period, there are written records of this period till the 19th century. Little was known about the prehistoric period. Around the 19th century, scholars began to dig at plaque where prehistoric men had once lived. This brought to light tools, pot-crude jewelry, bones of ancient men and animals, etc., depending the site. After analyzing these, historians came to the conclusion that the story of man began about 4 million years ago, in Africa. Where and how did people live in India? In India, life developed the same way as it did in other parts of the world. Initially, people lived on trees, then on land. First, they were hunt-gatherers. Later, they became agriculturists, farmers. The first civilization developed along the bank of River Indus and its tributaries about 4,700 years ago in the Indian subcontinent. The early men did not know anything about cooking food. Th lived on fruits, roots, berries. Some of the earliest people living along the banks of River Narmada were skilled hunters and gatherers. They hunt animals and gathered forest produce for food. About 8,000 years ago, people discovered the art of growing their own food, i.e., agriculture. India, crops were first grown in the area lying to the northwest Suleiman and Krithar hills. The people who then lived near the Garoha in the northeast and Vindhyas in central India learned farming some later. Rice and barley were mainly grown. With the coming of fake cultivation, people stopped wandering and began settling down. Let's discuss. How do people travel world? Rosthe, war days. Just like any other country in the world, India's history and development over the years has been influenced by her geography. The Himalayan ram separates India from Central Asia and Western Asia. But there are passes this mountain range, the Khyber Pass and the Bolan Pass. Throughout ancient times, many tribes crossed over into in. Through these mountain passes, below the mountain ranges lie the great plains of the Indus and Ganges. These plains are very fertile. In the beginning, there were dense forests in this region. As more and more people settled down on these fertile plains, small settlements grew in clearings cut in the forests. These became villages and, later, towns. In the later period, many cities developed along the banks of river Ganges and its tributaries. In the northern plains, many empires including those of Magadh, the Mauryas, and flourished and fell. To the south of these plains are the Vindhya mountain ranges. These ranges separate the northern plains from the southern part of the country. The southern peninsula has an elevated plateau with numerous rivers flowing. Evidence of early human settlement has been found in the valley systems of these rivers. There were a number of ports in the eastern and western coasts of the peninsula. Trade with foreign countries took place from these ports. One such port was Surat. Archaeological evidence reveals that the people of Surat traded with the Phoenicians about 3,000 years ago. Over the years, despite natural barriers like mountains, rivers, deserts, etc., people started traveling all over the subcontinent. Trade probably began when people of one tribe came into contact with those of other tribes, and wished to exchange their products. This led to the barter system. Those who had managed to domesticate animals often used them as beasts of burden. Traders used them to carry agricultural products to distant places. As a result, commerce was born. Some people became full-time traders. Spurred by the tales that far-ranging traders brought back with them, religious preachers also moved across the land to spread their ideas. Throughout, people traveled from one part of the subcontinent to another. Men and women moved in search of livelihood, and some people traveled to discover new and exciting places. As a result, all these led to the sharing of ideas between people of different paths. Timeline. What do dates mean? History deals with the story of man's past, present, and future. Therefore, it is important that each event is linked to a fixed point of time, on a suitable scale. Thus, would work like centimeter marks on a ruler. This is why historians introduced the concept of BC and AD. The years before the birth of Christ are expressed in BC or before Christ. All dates before the birth of Christ are counted backwards. Let's understand. Organized agriculture based on planned irrigation resulted in the first food surplus society. Since there was now more than enough food for everyone, alternative vocations, the Guptas, rose, developed. So did money, since labor had become a convertible commodity and could be bought with a common currency. For the first time in history, people in an agricultural society could devote time to arts, sciences, various forms of recreation and speculative thinking, philosophy. Any activity that enabled them to earn money was enough to buy food. The more an activity or product was in demand, the greater the amount of money earned. This is how society grew more and more complex. Different groups of people specialized in different professions, occupations or types of manual work such as carpentry or carving. In time, society developed into an interdependent ecosystem of human activities. Let's understand. South Asia is often called a subcontinent. Why? Although it is smaller than a continent, it is very large and is separated rest of a mountains. On the other hand, AD stands for Anno Domini, or the year of from the Lord. It stands for the years after the birth of Christ. Therefore, the seas, hills and year 2008 can be written as AD 2008. Lord Buddha is said to have been born sometime between 563 and 483 BC. This means that the Buddha was born about 500 years before the birth of Christ. Some historians use the words CE instead of AD, and BCE instead of BC. The letters CE stand for Common Era, and BCE for Before Common Era. Names of the land: Arabian Sea. Our country has different names like India, Bharat, and Hindustan. The word India came from the word Indus. The word Indus comes from the original Sanskrit name of the river, which is Sindhu. The Iranians and the Greeks who came through the northwest called it the Hindos, or the Indos, and the land to the east of the river was called India. In course of time, the country came to be known as India in Greek and Hind in Persian. The name Bharat or Bharatvarsha was given to the country after the name of an ancient clan, tribe, the Bharats. Later on, the word Hind became Hindustan. Nicobar 500 BC, Lakshadweep, Indian Ocean, timeline, 5500 BC, 5000 BC, sources of Indian history, 200 BC, 100 BC, birth of Christ 0, 100 AD, 200 AD, 500 AD, 5000 AD, 5500 AD. India has one of the oldest civilizations in the world, with a rich cultural heritage. In order to learn about the past of our country, we have to collect information from a variety of sources. These are sources of history, archaeological, literary, written. 1. Written records, religious, literature, secular, literature. 2. Foreign accounts. 1. Monuments, non-written. 2. Coins. 3. Inscriptions, IV. Epigraphy v. Oral tradition. 1. Archaeological sources, study of ancient buildings, monuments, works of art, coins, pottery. A layout of Harappan site. It is one of the most important sites of the Indus Valley Given and tools belonging to the past is called archaeology. The excavations at Harappa help us to know something about the Harappan culture. These excavations give us some details about the culture which flourished in northwest India about 5000 years ago. Monuments like stupas, temples, and paintings of ancient times come under archaeology, the study of ancient artifacts. The works of art at Ajanta, Ellora, and Mahabalipuram give us an idea about the clothes, ornaments, the ways of life of people who lived long ago, and their achievements in art. Ancient ruins discovered at various sites in Central Asia clearly indicate the spread of Indian culture outside India. They also give us an idea about the artistic activities of Indians. 2. Oral tradition. A. Myths, Narratives revolving around real or sometimes imaginary events and people are called myths. In India, myths are mostly about the gods and their supernatural actions. Imaginary characters are called legends. Legends have been preserved in oral traditions through the ages. They are mostly cast in the form of poetry. See, ballads. Short narrative poems recited through the ages are called ballads. For example, folk tales about Raja Desing in Tamil Nadu were composed in the praise of his valor. Cast in the form of songs. Ajanta. WHO is a historian. Those who study the past and use the word source to refer to the information found from manuscripts, inscriptions and b. legends, stories based on historical events but sometimes some archaeology. Let's discuss. What do you mean by Saka Samvat and Vikram? They have been handed down by shepherds and tribes through the centuries, and give us a lot of information about the beliefs, customs and manners of the past. 3. Written records. Written records include a. Manuscripts. b. Literary sources. A. Manuscripts. Before paper was made, people wrote on dried leaves, barks of birch trees. They also wrote on dried skins of sheep and goats known as parchment. These handwritten records are called manuscripts. They give us a lot of information about the role of kings, the way people lived, their customs and habits, and the important events of that period. A manuscript. b. Literary sources. They are of two kinds, religious literature and secular literature. What is a manuscript? The word manu has been borrowed from Latin. It means hand, and by script we mean the form of writing a particular language. Religious literature. The four Vedas, namely Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva, are the earliest religious literature. The Vedic hymns were recited and passed down orally from one generation to another. These hymns were composed by sages. The Vedic literature also includes the Upanishads and the Ayanakas. The two epics Ramayana and Mahabharata, the Puranas, and Buddhist and Jain texts also come under religious literature. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata tell us how the social and economic life and the religious beliefs of people underwent many significant changes. They also provide us with information about the origin and growth of the caste system. The Puranas contain information about various kings and their reigns. These historical facts are mixed with the accounts of gods and imaginary characters. The earliest Buddhist texts, written in the Pali language, give us many details about the life and teachings of Gautam Buddha and about the kings who ruled the Magadha Empire. The Jain texts, written in the Prakrit language, add to our understanding of the history of eastern Uttar Pradesh and Bihar in the age of Mahavira. Secular literature, non-religious literature, is known as secular literature. The Sangam literature is an important source of information for the social, economic, and political life of the ancient Tamils. Kalhana's Rajatarangini helps us to know about the history of Kashmir. Banabta's Harsha Charita gives us information about Harsha's period. Kautilya's Arthashastra provides us with much information about the Mauryan period. Foreign accounts. They are accounts left behind by foreign visitors who traveled through India. These foreign accounts are valuable historic sources because they are written from their viewpoint as a stranger to the land. Hence, they are unbiased or untouched by local influences. The Indica written by Megasthenes, the Greek ambassador in the court of Chandragupta Maurya, is a reliable account of the Mauryan period. Two Chinese travelers, Fa Jian, Fahin, and Shan Zhang, Haiwen Sang, have left behind accounts of what they saw. These are very valuable sources for historians studying this period. Fahin gives a detailed account of the reign of Chandragupta Vikramaditya. Wen Sang wrote his book entitled Siyuki, which is an important source of information about Harsha. 5. Coins. Coins are important source of information for ancient history. They give us information about a king, his period of rule and the extent of his kingdom. From the type of coin, e.g., copper, silver or gold, we can also understand the economic condition of a period. The coins of Samudragupta show his interest in music. The Gupta coins made of gold indicate that trade and commerce flourished during that period. The Gupta coins are noted for their artistic beauty. The Roman coins of gold and silver unearthed at Arikamedu tell us about the trade connections between India and Rome. The Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, Chalukyas and Pallavas kings minted coins containing their emblems and legends. 6. Inscriptions. Ancient inscriptions have been found on rocks and pillars, copper plates, temple walls and caves. Men of importance such as kings inscribed their laws, deeds and teachings on them. The edicts of Ashoka give us information about his Dhamma, the extent of his empire and the life of the people. Hence, they are very useful sources of information about this Mauryan king. The Allahabad pillar inscriptions of Samudragupta tell us much about the Gupta period. The Tiruvalangadu and Uttaramarur inscriptions give us a lot of information about the Chola period. The Uttaramarur inscriptions give us good information about the local administration of the Cholas. 7. Epigraphy. Epigraphy is the study of written records engraved on stone or copper plates. James Principe, an official of the Calcutta, Kolkata Mint and secretary of the Asiatic Society of Bengal, was the first to interpret the Brahmi script, and was thus able to read the edicts of Mauryan ruler Ashoka, which were inscribed in that language. Elsewhere in the world, Brahmi script. Rosetta is an ancient town of Egypt where inscriptions going back, ruled about 5,000 years ago, were found. The stone slab in question, now in the British Museum in London, is the famous Rosetta Stone, which was discovered by Napoleon Bonaparte's army in Egypt. The inscriptions were in 3 different languages, Greek and 2 forms of Egyptian. The pictorial letters represent the names of kings and queens respectively. Since Greek was known to scholars, the Egyptian pictorial writing next to it could finally be understood.